Hi you guys, and welcome back to my channel, or welcome for the first time if you are finding this video for the first time. Hi, my name is Gabrielle. I am a mother, a homemaker, a homeschooler, a mother of 4. And so yeah, welcome. I'm glad you're here. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I make my sourdough breads from start to finish. I got into sourdough bread making this year. At the top, I would say in January, I started my sourdough starter, and then I challenged myself in the month of February to make all of our bread products, and I just love it. And so I make most all of our bread products in home. We rarely ever buy bread products anymore. I can count on one hand the amount of times we have bought bread products from the store this year. So I'm going to share with you the process of how I make my sourdough bread. There are plenty of different ways to do it. People have lots of different tactics and things like that, but I'm going to show you how I do it. It's really simple. It just takes some planning because sourdough basically takes 24 hours from the time you feed the starter to when you can have fresh bread. So I hope you enjoyed the video. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye. The very first part of making bread is feeding your starter. So what that means is you want to add equal parts water, equal parts flour to your starter and mix that around. So I chose to keep 50 grams of my starter, and so I'm mixing 100 grams of flour and 100 grams of water. I'm just mixing it really well, and you want it to be like a pancake type consistency, so not too thick, not too watery, and it'll have like a gooey kind of texture, and that's exactly what you're looking for. Once you feed your starter and you leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours, how long can vary, but you see how there are bubbles on the side and on the top. That's what you're looking for. That means the yeast are becoming active. So a good way to tell if your starter is ready to bake with is you add a little bit of water to a container or a bowl, and you go ahead and add a little bit of your starter to that water. And what you're looking for is the starter needs to float. So I'm trying to show you here that it's sitting on top of the water, and so that means it is ready to cook with. So once you determine that your starter is ready for baking, you are going to add the other ingredients. So here I have 280 grams of water, and I'm going to add 120 grams of starter. You notice I'm working in grams, so it's really important with sourdough bread baking that you use a scale, and scales are pretty cheap. You can find them, I think I found this one for like $14-15, but you'll find when you're working with baking bread, specifically sourdough bread, a lot of the recipes you will find work in grams. And so I have my 280 grams of water, I have my 120 grams of starter, and I'm going ahead and mixing that with this Danish dough hook. But if you don't have one of those, you can use like a wooden spoon or anything to just mix it up. Next, I am adding 10 grams of honey. Then I'm going to add 380 grams of bread flour and also 40 grams of rye flour. or any whole wheat flour you can use. I like using a particular brand of artisan flour, and I will try to link it below if I can find the link to it. So once you add all of your flour in, you're going to mix that well. You're going to mix it to the consistency of a shaggy dough. So you're not mixing it until it's smooth. As you can see right here, it's really shaggy. And so after you mix it to a shaggy dough, you're going to cover it with a cloth and you're going to let it rest at room temperature for 1 hour. And then you're going to add 10 grams of salt. I don't know what happened to the clip where I add this, but you are going to add 10 grams of salt after 1 hour. And then after you add the 10 grams of salt after an hour, you're going to let it rest at room temperature for another hour. So 2 hours total. After the first hour, you're adding 10 grams of salt. So while it's resting at room temperature, what I'm doing right now is I actually doubled this recipe. So if you're looking to do that, just double the measurements that I gave you. But one of the loaves, I am going to make a chive and cheddar loaf. And so I'm just prepping those ingredients now, chopping up my chives, shredding my cheese in preparation to adding that to one of my doughs. So that's what I'm doing right here. So after the 2 hours of rest time, I'm going to take my dough and add in those chives and the cheddar. I'm showing you the Banneton basket and some brown rice flour. The Banneton basket is to help the dough hold its shape. You don't have to have one of those, but they make like a pretty design on the bottom of the bread if you do have one. But if you just have any kind of bowl or anything, you can use that as well. And I use the brown flour to coat the basket. And then I'm just going to do a bit of kneading of the dough, and that's just working it to kind of stretch those gluten. And so I'm going to place it in my Banneton basket, seam side up, and then I'm going to sprinkle the top with some more of that bread flour. I mean, not bread flour, the brown rice flour. And I use brown rice flour for this because it's just lighter, but if you don't have brown rice flour, you can use any kind of flour to flour your bowl or basket and the tops of your bread. So like I said, I told you I doubled it, so that's why you see me making 2. But the measurements that I gave you are the measurements for 1 loaf, but you can certainly double it or triple it, or how many ever loaves you want to make. You can do that. So I'm just kneading this one as well, shaping it into a ball, and then I'm gonna plop that down into the basket. And then I'm going to cover both of those, and this is like a linen towel. So I cover both of those, and I'm going to just pop those right into the refrigerator. And you can refrigerate them for 6 hours, and then you can take them out to bake. But I usually refrigerate them until the next morning, and so it's up to you. While I have popped those in, I'm going ahead and cleaning up my area. And here we are at the next morning. So the next morning, I am going to get my Dutch oven, and I'm going to put it in the oven with the lid on, and I'm gonna set the oven to bake at not 300, at 500 degrees. You need it really hot, and I really love using the Dutch oven because with the lid it can keep the moisture in. And once that Dutch oven has heated up in the oven for about 30 minutes, I'm going to take out one of the loaves. I'm gonna tip it over out of the basket onto some parchment paper. And this is the fun part, you guys. This is my favorite part. It's called scoring the bread, which basically you're cutting it with a razor. And this is really important to kind of help let out some of the steam so that your bread doesn't bust open. But I really love to play around with the designs. You can get really creative. I usually keep them pretty simple, but you can really get intricate with this if you want. So once your bread is scored, you're going to take out the Dutch oven from the oven. And you're going to use the parchment paper to carry your bread over and place it in the Dutch oven. You want to put back on the lid. And then I am going to turn down my oven back down to 450 because my oven gets really hot and I don't want my bread to get too browned when I take off the lid for it to bake. And so, okay, so with the lid, you bake it for 30 minutes. And then once it's done baking with the lid for 30 minutes, you take off the lid and you bake it for 10 more minutes. And this is the finished product, you guys. Look how beautiful it is. Look how browned and toasted. The outside is crunchy, the inside is soft. Just with these simple ingredients in a little bit of time, you get to make a beautiful loaf for you or your family to enjoy. So thank you for watching this video, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you make a loaf. If you do, I want to see it, and I'll see you in my next video.